Welcome to Superchargers. I'm Daniel Thomas. Let's go. G'day guys, my guest on this episode is Mary Beth Schrudder. Mary is a spiritual and transformational life coach and founder of Day One Life Coaching. Juggling being a single mum while secretly battling addictions to alcohol, food and toxic relationships, Mary is now an expert in spiritual recovery who is passionate about helping others to live their best life. Here is my conversation with Mary Beth Schrudder. What did addiction look like for you, and where do you think it sort of came from?
So I know it came from childhood because I've done all the work and, kind of had to do all that shadow work where we have to find the root cause and heal and forgive. And I had a lot of childhood trauma. And essentially, my parents divorced when I was 5 years old. And I don't think a lot of people even realize how traumatic that is for a kid, especially and then it's like different ages. It's worse. And 5 is one of the worst ones to be when your parents divorce. I don't know why, but I grew up in the 70s and there was no therapy. No one literally, I remember being on my driveway playing with the ball. I have a freakish memory. I remember being 2 years old, but this was when I was 5, and it's really weird. So I'm playing with this ball by myself. My dad comes out and he's like, "Yeah, I'm not going to be living here anymore." And I was like, "What?" And that was it. And it was like this abandonment wound, right? And that led to, so I don't only have the alcohol addiction. I think I just have like the brain of an addict in general. But that led to later on in life relationship problems, and it because I had that anxious attachment style that kind of created this anxious attachment to where I just was felt like that abandonment wound is the best way to say it. And I was like the clingy type of person. And I've learned we're not stuck in our attachment styles. So I was anxious, and then I went during my healing process to avoidant, where I became the person where it's like, no one's ever going to hurt me again, and no one's going to control me, and that things like that. And then now I'm back. After I have secure relationships, secure attachment style. So we're not ever stuck in our attachment styles. But that's where I think it started, because I went into this generalized anxiety mode back when my dad moved out, my mom got a job, and then we were left with these neighbors that totally neglected us. I think there was a lot of neglect going on in the 70s in general.
Mm.
I don't know how old you are, but
Yeah.
that we didn't have essentially our parents really never knew where we were most of the time, even really young. We had a lot of free time, just come home when you're dark. I mean, when it's dark out, but the neighbors didn't even feed us. And I think that's what started my food addiction. Cause I remember I was always hungry, and my mom would get home from work late, and she's paying this lady. She thought we were being fed. It wasn't like my mom knew what was going on. And it was just my normal. I didn't even know to say anything. It was just my life. But, I think between that and then just always having anxiety and being like, wow, my dad left. Oh my gosh, that means my mom can just leave too. That's how our 5-year-old brains, that's the conclusion I came to. So I just had separation anxiety. Every time my mom left the house, I thought she was either going to die, get in a car wreck, right? Or leave, just decide to not come back. And interestingly enough, the reason I'm telling you that story is because the first time I drank alcohol, I was only 11. And I was on vacation with a friend and her family. And her parents left some alcohol out on the counter, and we were just reckless kids, right? We don't know what we're doing. We're like, let's mix some stuff. We just made some concoctions and have no idea what I drank. But I can tell you that I was like, this is the first time I was just so relaxed, because I had this generalized anxiety and I didn't know. Now I can say, okay, well, my nervous system was dysregulated, and I know what it was now. And so that having that alcohol, it felt like the answer to all my problems, because I definitely had the social anxiety, but mainly generalized anxiety. I don't remember not having it. So I felt all of this relief. I was always a sensitive kid anyway. I think a lot of people who get into addiction, they tend to be the more sensitive types, right? So yeah, that's kind of when I didn't start becoming a regular drinker at 11, but I did at 14. I got a boyfriend who was a couple years older than me, and he provided it. We drank all the time. I started smoking weed with him at 14. I mean, we did acid. I tried cocaine. I was just a reckless person, and I think a lot of that is to do with the my personality type, addictive brain. There's some genetics. My dad's dad, my paternal grandfather. I never met him because he died when my mom was pregnant with me. They were taking care of him. He died of cirrhosis of the liver. So there's a genetic component as well. But I think for all of us, and maybe you could tell me a little bit about yourself, but we're just like, it's self-soothing. We're trying to self-medicate. We were looking for relief. We know innately we're supposed to feel good and we don't feel good, or we're trying to numb things down, like the sensitive thing where I feel so much, and it would help me to numb out. And just, and same with food, no matter what the addiction is, we're always just trying to comfort ourselves. So is that how it was with you?
It's the more I do this show, the more I realize we're far more alike than we are different. But it's quite,
Mhm.
I kind of sense that we might have some similar aspects in our stories. And for me, it's pretty much the same deal. Divorce at 5.
Whoa, that's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, yeah. So when you said it, I'm like, well, I mean, I mean, divorce, particularly back
It's a
then, was
bad
so
age for
common.
kids.
But exactly, this 5, you're just starting to open your eyes to the world and sort of get a sense of everything. You're not a baby anymore, and it's I think if you're a teenager, you're probably a little more equipped, perhaps in some way, maybe not. But as a 5-year-old, you're just so vulnerable to take on the impact of it. Like you, mine was out of left field. Everything was
Mhm.
fine. We were happy. We'd migrated from England to Australia, and everything seemed fine. And then it was the same deal, literally overnight. My dad was like, "Your mum and I aren't together anymore." And then a couple of days later, he was packing to leave. And yeah, from you've talked about the response being kind of abandonment. Mine was a little bit more blaming myself. This must be my fault.
Right. I did that too. And that's why I thought I was going to be abandoned by my mom. Right. Because
Right.
it's like, yeah. So we always internalize it as children because we don't, like I said, we didn't have therapy.
Yep.
My parents didn't even talk to me about it.
Mm. So the abandonment yeah, it's a similar thing, the blaming self, the abandonment. It's
Hmm.
a survival response. And it's traumatic, as you say. So yeah, that I didn't discover alcohol as young as you did, which I guess I'm grateful for, because as soon as I did, when I was 17 or 18, it was exactly like you said. My stepmom describes it as it was like I pressed a button, like I literally pulled the switch.
Mm.
And same as you, it was just a massive amount of relief, because I was just so pent up with all this suppressed trauma and stuff that I'd squashed down, and just it was a wreck. And then as soon as I started drinking, just relief.
Yeah.
I could relax. It made me relax for the first time in like
Mhm.
17 years.
Right.
And then I just same same as with you. I had a lot of those pieces of the puzzles, family history, the DNA kind of stuff. So all those things combined, as soon as I discovered alcohol, it was really it was, for me, it was more binge drinking. So I was quite
Hmm.
disciplined and driven and determined in the week, but then as soon as weekends came, um, but in Australia, we drank like the world was ending when we were young, right? It was like if you went out,
Yeah.
especially as young males, if you went out and were like, "I'm not drinking tonight," you literally had to like fight
You
to
would be
defend.
made fun of. Well, it's the same here in the States. Like honestly, I'm the weirdo now who doesn't drink to this day. I haven't drank for over 5 years. How long has it
Mm.
been for you?
Same deal. Same deal. Let's just tick the boxes.
That's creepy. So
Let's just
yeah,
tick
like
the.
well, do you know your sober date? Because I don't really count the days.
I don't count it. It's around 5 years. I was just with a friend, and I was going to go a month, and then it turned into 5 years, but I don't know the exact date. So it might,
Nice.
yeah, might be 6.
Mine was September 8th. 5 years ago. So a little over 5 years for me. I just remember the day because I have two friends, they're twins, and I was with them. It was their birthday. So it's easy to remember. But I actually, and we could talk about that later, like I didn't go the, Alcoholics Anonymous route or any kind of programs or rehab or anything. And that's what I teach now is spiritual recovery. I did things differently. But and part of that includes not focusing on the number of days and not, like it's more of a shifting your energy, shifting your identity completely. Like you just can no longer be that person, like, and if you're going to meetings every day talking about, I am an alcoholic. That's what we have here. Do you guys have Alcoholics Anonymous where you are?
No, it's not. It's not. I'm sure it's in a different forms, but it's not. It's not called AA. Yeah.
Okay, I thought it was completely international, so that shows what I know. But like I had been to meetings because in 2008 I got a DUI, which is driving under the influence of alcohol, and I got arrested, and it was horrible. Like I was at a party, a little red dress, Valentine's Day. Do you have Valentine's Day?
Yes.
Is that okay?
Yes,
I was like, is that a United States thing?
And I'm not sure about the AA thing. I have to double, if it's international, I'm sure it is.
I don't know. Like you probably are right. If you've never heard of it, but or if you don't have any place, because it's very well known here. And but yeah, so I was ordered to go to some AA back then, so I do have experience with it, and I felt so. And by the way, I should say this as disclaimer, like I think people should do whatever works for them. The things I teach aren't going to be for everyone. It had to be spiritual recovery for me. It's the only way I was going to get out of it. But if AA or a program works for you, stick with it. Use whatever tools you need to get sober and stay sober. That's I'm not saying anything negative. I'm just talking about my personal experience. And then I know a lot of other people who think like this too, but you're in these meetings and you're telling the old story. You're saying, I am an alcoholic. Everybody's required to say that when they stand up and tell their old story. And to me, with like, I teach law of attraction too. And I was already like into it back in 2008. And I was like, well, why would you sit there and try to recreate this? Like if you're trying to change, saying I am anything, you're in powerful creator mode. You're creating that. It's a very powerful word. So I don't say that to this day. I never would call myself an alcoholic. I say I'm a person who used to have a really bad relationship with alcohol, but I no longer do. I will say that. I abused alcohol, but I don't say I am an alcoholic because I'm not trying to recreate that old reality. I had a total energetic shift, and where I'm just no longer that person who's going to order red wine at lunch, and I just am no longer that person. We change our identity. And how do you do that when you're going to meetings every day, telling that old story, staying in that old vibration? It simply didn't work with my spiritual beliefs and what I know about energy and law of attraction. It just wasn't a match for me. But it keeps a lot of people sober. But at the same time, what I noticed with people, I know a lot of people in AA, they're white knuckling it a lot of the time, which means they're dry drunks, which means they actually truly want to still drink. They're very much craving it. They're very much tempted and just blocking themselves. And to me, that's such a struggle. Like, I don't have that struggle. Like with the spiritual recovery, I filled my void with all this spiritual stuff and things like breath work and meditation and grounding and exercising, connecting with others. You've probably heard the opposite of alcoholism is not sobriety, it's connection, because we tend to isolate ourselves after a while. It's progressive. I started out like you, more of like we call it a weekend warrior, right? Just drinking on the weekend. But then it got progressive over time. It really does. And then the next thing you know, I am drinking by myself at home. Like I'd go to happy hour with friends. For me, it was like a reward after, like, I hated my job in corporate. And I really was just looking forward to, like, I deserve this. I deserve these drinks. So there's always people to meet with you. It's so glamorized and glorified and normal to meet for happy hour, have some drinks. Then it got progressive to where I would go to happy hour, be pretty buzzed, go get another bottle of wine and drink that when I got home by myself, so it was progressive. And I have the binger qualities in me as well. Some people can moderate, like they're turning up and down a dial. And for me, I'm all in or all out. I'm great at abstinence, it's a superpower of mine. It turns out, but this is something we got to ask ourselves personally. Like, do you have that off button, that stop button? I really didn't, like I just wanted more. And I'm the same way with food as I am with alcohol. Like, I don't want just one cookie. I want the whole sleeve of cookies. I want the whole box. And that's part of the addict's brain. That's how it works. We have a different experience with dopamine, and the way dopamine hits us, we get way, way, way more pleasure. And I'm going to ask you if that's true for you. And then I have a story to tell you about naltrexone. Remind me about that. But
yeah, no, I was told by a therapist once that I'm sort of was a bit like a swinging pendulum. So I would go all extreme, but in either direction. So it sounds like you have a similar, call it, trait, where it's like I can abstain from something, but I can also go the other way. And I've been on a kind of journey of trying to find more of a center, which I have now. But I was just going to ask, it's always interesting at parties or events now, being connected as opposed to sober, or, in
the present moment, it's so different, right?
But when people ask me, do you want a drink? And I say no, you get that initial, does he have a problem? What's the deal here? And it's taken me a while to navigate that. How do you find navigating that moment these days?
Well, I'm so over that, because you're right. It's so interesting how you have to justify not drinking. So I just started asking people, if you want to be a little cheeky about it, like, well, why are you drinking? And it's like, don't make me justify not drinking. You tell me, why do you have to drink to have fun? Like, I've learned, and it wasn't overnight. I had to practice and learn. Like, I didn't go to parties for a while because I wanted to make sure that I was completely detoxed and got my mind straight and did all the spiritual recovery work. And then I can put myself in those situations. Right. So it was a few months. I think I didn't put myself in any temptation situation, but just like, honestly, for a long time, when I would first get to a party or a bar or a restaurant and everyone's drinking, I had 15 minutes of straight up anxiety, where I was like, I call it a warm up period. I needed a warm up period. But sure enough, every time, someone's drinking and then they start slurring and repeating themselves. And it's like, I just wait that out. They get to that point. I'm always so, so thankful. And I'm not judging, because I was the same damn way. I know I was thought I was funnier than I was. And all of those things. We think we're just so confident, right? When we're uninhibited, and it's really dumbing down our brain, as though the reality is what's happening and everything seems funnier. But when we're sober, we're looking at these people, and I'm with friends who I thought were so hilarious. And now that I'm sober, I'm like, all right, they weren't as funny. And I wasn't as funny as I thought I was either. So I just really wait that time out. And I do, if somebody puts me on the spot like that, I'll also tell them, like, well, I teach, addiction recovery, and I'm living in integrity now. Like, I don't want to be that, say one thing and do another, that's out of character.
It's so classic. I have had people with, even when I used to be a vegetarian, I'm not anymore, but again, I swang that way with being a vegetarian. I
did too.
I didn't do it well, to be honest. I didn't do it really. I'm really happy to be back on meat now, but
I'm actually full carnivore now, but it's because of autoimmune, but it goes along with my extremeness, right? But and it's cured my autoimmune disease, and I only found it because it was curing a lot of people's autoimmune and things that are not supposed to be cured or going away, like MS, diabetes, all these things that are supposed to be irreversible. People are reversing it. Any type of autoimmune, even arthritis is an autoimmune disease. And I'm in all these groups, and this is such a tangent, but I just want to insert that, because I would have loved to have known about it about 3 years earlier than I found it. And I feel fantastic. I feel better than I did, in my 30s.
That's carnivore diet.
Carnivore diet is curing autoimmune things and things you are not supposed to be cured from. And I follow doctors, carnivore doctors, Dr. Anthony Chafee, Dr. Ken Berry. Look up those two. If anyone who's listening and who's suffering with weird flare-ups from autoimmune, and literally I'm back to health. But if I try to eat vegetables again, I get a flare-up. And here's why: because I was being an all extreme vegetarian. Turns out that vegetables have a natural, this is just natural, this is not the pesticides I'm talking about. They have a natural defense chemicals. They don't have claws and teeth to protect themselves like other animals would do. So they just create naturally their defense chemicals. I had a buildup of those toxins, and there's something called oxalates that, like it just destroys our gut. And so it was really, all of our gut starts on our health. And look, I drank for 30 years. Probably part of it is destroying my gut from the alcohol abuse, right? And so then on top of that, with trying to be vegetarian, that combination, just, destroyed me, and carnivore is healing me. And I've been doing carnivore for about a year and 3 months strict, and I feel fantastic.
That's amazing. There must be a certain amount of discipline that comes with that, though. Again, the temptation thing.
It is, but thank you for saying that, because I actually have less. It's easier for me. And maybe that's part, like abstaining from stuff. I don't have all these options anymore of what I can eat, but also I'm eating a lot of fat, healthy fats, and a lot of protein. So before, as a vegetarian, I was always hungry, and I was always just ravenous and cravings. I'd had cravings, and there was carbs involved. I do zero carbs. It turns out there's no such thing as an essential carbohydrate. Did you know that? Isn't that crazy? I was taught, okay, I went to sports nutrition. I went to school for sports nutrition for a while. So I had to unlearn everything I learned. Cholesterol is not bad for you. Turns out it's actually really good for your brain. Like, our brains make cholesterol. And so there's a lot of things that are not true that we're being taught about nutrition. And all these carnivores are getting healthier and healthier. And, our environment's toxic, our water's toxic, our soil's toxic. It's just like people are getting to toxic overloads, which I think is what's causing a lot of this stuff. But I don't crave carbs or sugar anymore because it's not in my system. I feel less restricted, just like I don't crave cocaine because it's not in my system. So it's very interesting that before is when it was harder and I needed to be more disciplined. Now that these things aren't an option, they're not in my system, I don't have the physical cravings, I'm always satisfied with what I eat, I feel fantastic. Like, I don't have these temptations because I don't get the cravings.
Do you have a diet plan that you follow, or was there a book or something that, or if you
those doctors definitely follow those doctors,
yeah.
But yeah. And I do take some supplements because, like, I take vitamin C, omega-3s, because I don't do fish, but anyone on carnivore, you can do fish, chicken, you can do red meat. Red meat is actually the most nutrient dense and most healthy thing that we can eat, but we were taught the opposite. We were taught that it takes 3 days to digest it. It actually digests in your small intestines. And I eat because I'm doing the gut healing. I do red meat. I do red meat and eggs. That's all I do. And we need to do salt. Like, I do Celtic or Celtic salt. I don't even know which way to pronounce it, but CELTIC. Is it Celtic?
Celtic.
Okay.
Celtic.
So, because the C throws me off because anyway. But I do that, and it's got all these minerals in it. So that's your electrolyte. So I salt it, and I use no seasoning. You can do butter for your fat. I do beef tallow for my fat because I try to stay away from dairy. But yeah, there's a lot. Most people can be way more flexible than I am, but I'm just doing, like, for me, it's better to do it this way. And then I just released all this weight without trying, because I don't eat anything processed, right? It's just all real food, just basically steak and eggs. What'd you have for breakfast? Steak and eggs. What'd you have for dinner? Steak and eggs. I eat twice a day, and that's it. And it's just, you lose weight because you're not eating all of this stuff and you don't have all this sodium in your food, but you're only having real salt. It's like the sodium that's in your processed foods, anything that comes in a bag or a box, right? You're going to see a really high. That's not the good sodium. Like, this is real salt that is has the electrolytes and the minerals and vitamins that you need. So, and I do take a methylated multivitamin every day too. Methylated is absorbed better in your body.
I've been curious to it for a while, so I think I might have to take a closer look at it.
It's a hard adjustment in the beginning. Like, your body is literally going from being a carb and sugar burner to a fat burner. And so you're just in ketosis all the time. But you could tell, I'm not low on energy, right? Like,
No, no, and you have a radiance about you, which you can.
I didn't before carnivore. I thought I was dying before carnivore. I really, because I was just constantly having these flare ups and all these problems and just infections that would like, I would just be sick all the time. And it was because I had that buildup of defense chemicals and toxins and oxalates in my body. So when you start out carnivore, you might go through a lot of withdrawals, and it was harder and to switch over. So I always recommend taking it slowly. Try out keto first, and just kind of eliminating things a little bit. Like, I mean, because even peanuts and things, they're still plants. So I had to really, I did it overnight, kind of going back to the extremists. I'm all in, I'm all out. Like, I just overnight just did it. I went straight to carnivore. So a lot of people like to do this slow keto thing.
No, very interesting. No, that's fascinating actually. But to go a little bit back to the addiction side of things.
Yeah. It's a tangent.
No, it's an awesome tangent.
Yeah, I just feel like this is such important information for people to know. And I could tell when you said you eat meat, you'd be open to it. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, so one of your sort of core beliefs is that, call it overcoming addiction or whatever it may be, that there's a certain amount of spirituality or spiritual healing that's needed there. And I have heard, in some of the 12-step type things, they do kind of try and address a faith sort of
they do
aspect. So for you, how did you? Were you always like a spiritual person, or was it something you became curious over time?
So I was always spiritual. Like, I always had spiritual, like paranormal almost type experiences since I was a kid. And I think a lot of that was why I always had generalized anxiety, because I could feel other people's energy so much. I could feel like and I didn't know that was what was happening. Like, as a kid, I really actually thought this is all my stuff, like I'm feeling my own feelings, but I was feeling everybody else's energy too. Like, you've probably heard the term empath. I didn't even learn that till I was in my 30s, that I was an empath. And that's why I don't do well around crowds. Well, now I can be around crowds because I've learned how to block the energy, but I certainly didn't know how to do that as a kid. And I was always constantly overwhelmed. I've had a lot of spiritual experiences. Actually, a significant one when I was 18. Like, I was always a spiritual seeker because I always just had I've lived in a haunted house. Like, I never questioned, is this stuff real? Because I had so many firsthand experiences that I didn't question it. But I was afraid of death, right? I was really just kind of obsessed with it for a little while. And when I was 18, I started to really get into near-death experiences, right? So this is back in like 1992, right around there, 1993 maybe. I can't do math, but I was definitely like obsessed with near-death experiences. I'm reading this book and they were describing like the other side and all of these things. And I was like, had this major, they call it, what I can call it now is it's called a spiritually transformative experience, STE. It now has a label, which I just learned about like a year and a half ago. And so that's what happened. It was a spiritually transformative experience where suddenly I'm reading this book and it was almost like my soul was remembering. It wasn't like I was learning or acquiring information. It was like things I already knew that I had forgotten. And what I want to call, I had no idea what was happening to me back then, but what I want to call it now, a lot of people talk about we're in this 3D reality, 3D. It was like I was in 5D, like I was suddenly in this different dimension, yet I'm still here in my body physically, but I'm like living in 5D when everyone else is in 3D. But I was just brought into this. It was crazy. Like, I was able to see how everything was connected. I would think of a question and it would like get the answer downloaded to me. Like, I understood things that quantum physics, things that I can't, like, look, this wasn't given to me permanently. Like while I was in that state, in that paradigm, it was a paradigm shift. I don't know what it was, but I was able to just like understand all of these things and think, like, it was very a telepathic thing. I'm able to just really, it's like I went from base consciousness to unity consciousness. Like before that, I was very selfish and self-centered, and seeing how everything was connected, and how anytime all these little things that we do really matter, and the way that there's always a ripple effect with everything. And it was kind of shown to me. It was like I was embodying it. And I was in these really higher frequencies of love and joy and bliss, like that I'd never felt before. And I'm sitting there like trying to tell people, and they're like looking at me like I'm batshit crazy. Like, what is wrong with you, lady? They wanted to commit me. I already lived on my own. My parents had moved, and I'm telling my friends this, and they just all thought I was insane. I just knew, I just had the sense of urgency to just change my life. Now, this lasted about 2 weeks. Like I was going to, we didn't have the internet back then. So I'm going to like bookstores, libraries, reading things. And I've like read, enlightenment and things like this. And it was just so interesting, but the world did eventually take me back down slowly over the 2 weeks. And then I was back like into the contrast, the 3D reality where I was like, it was, and then I actually it was depressed, because I went from being in this beautiful, blissful state realm, that's a perfect word, to 3D reality. You're back to this bitch, and I actually got depressed, and I couldn't really connect with anybody anymore because nobody knew I didn't have any guidance. I didn't know how to integrate this experience into my life as an 18-year-old. So what did I do? This is part of the addiction story. It's why I'm telling you. I ended up going, well, the only way I feel connected to anybody even a little bit now, it doesn't compare at all, is alcohol. It made me feel more connected to people. So that's when I think my drinking got I kind of pretty bad. Then, I started to drink more, and, there's really, I think in retrospect, I think I needed to go through all of this addiction and have all this experience because I'm teaching it now. I think that I needed to embody that, 5D reality, because I'm teaching things about frequency and law of attraction. And so like, what better way to prepare yourself than actually embodying the experience instead of only reading it in books? Like I was there. I know this stuff is real. And I saw like just how powerful we are. We're just these powerful creators. Everything's energy. And that's why everything we do matters. It affects everyone, and especially ourselves. And most of us are depressed and anxious because we're not creating our lives. We're living our lives by default, kind of letting the world throw us around. And we really need to each day, and this is what I teach in my coaching, we have so much control over our day than we allow. And we're not being the powerful creators we were meant to be. And that's why we're depressed. That's why we're anxious, because we're just having the same thoughts and all the same, we're having the same behaviors the day before, the day before, the day before. Then we wonder why our life never changes. We wonder why we're bored. We wake up like not happy. Like I got to go through my day again, and it really did help me when I found my passion of coaching, which has been like 7 years ago. Like that's like, because I quit drinking 5 years ago, but I really slowed down when I started coaching because I started to love my life again. So a lot of this is finding your purpose, finding something that you love and helping others, serving others. It's going to help keep you from wanting to drink because you start to love your life again and having that passion. You need to find something like that, because a lot of us just try to fill our lives with all these distractions instead of passions.
Absolutely. Again, some similar things. So when you had that, you said it was a book that triggered that enlightenment.
A near-death experience book. Like I was reading a lot of them. Yeah.
But were you at quite a low stage of life there?
Yeah.
You were ready to kind of have.
I was always reading books like that. I think that I just wasn't living my life purpose at all. I was just kind of, like I said, I was pretty selfish and base consciousness, meaning just all about me, just, and this book opened me up, and I was never the same again. Like, it's not like, even though I started drinking, I became a different person at that point. I truly just cared about other people and so much more. I was no longer selfish, and I never, like, just the karmic thing. I do think, well, when people die, like if you ever read about near-death experience, they go through a life review. In this life review, you feel everybody's feelings of like, so everything that you do matters, even those things that you don't think matter. It could be something small, like the way you talked to your mom that day, right? And how it made her feel. You got to feel all of these things it just affects things so much. And it's not like a punishment. It's more of like, this is how you learn. You learn by experiencing, oh, okay, that's what, cause and effect. So I think that that was like huge for me too. And when I embodied that experience and seeing like just the world, and like I see this homeless guy and I realize, oh my gosh, like I saw him in his spirit instead of who he just was. I saw him every day. I drove by him every day and I was like, he actually chose to be there. He's a smiley guy. Like that was his life purpose in that moment that he was doing. And before that, I was judging him. So it just made you look at the world differently, if that makes sense.
For sure. And this was the thing about it was the same thing here in terms of the drinking. Once my priorities shifted and once I found far more purpose and alignment, and I was a father, I'd become a father as well.
Oh.
Once I had this sense of purpose and was far less ego driven, that call it the thirst, got less and less, but the
Mm-hmm.
kind of habitual nature of it still had its grip on me. But the more I got things into line, the less of that compulsion to shake things up was it wasn't there anymore in terms of the drinking as I did all the self work and the reflection and the had similar epiphanies and things. Once all that sort of came to a head, that thirst, that underlying thing, there was a foundation there, and then I was ready.
Mm-hmm.
So I needed to be ready. I just wasn't.
And it takes time. It's a journey,
Mm,
right? There's no spiritual awakening without a healing journey. Like you have to do the work. You have to address the root cause, or again, you're going to end up the dry drunk who really still wants to drink all the time, because you haven't gotten to the root problem,
mm.
and we got to bring all that subconscious bullshit that we don't want to deal with. We have to bring it to the surface. It's not fun, but it's worth it.
I was going to say, like, I know you had anxiety as well. Anxiety was a big one for me because I was well liked and popular, and I was in a seemingly successful career, and but I was being very excessive and just keeping myself as busy as possible to avoid dealing with the stuff that I had to confront, as you
Mm-hmm.
just mentioned. So, I was working full time, studying full time, doing shows in a band at night, and absolutely obliterating the weekends, and then being back at the desk with pressing deadlines in architecture, and just until I started to suffer crippling anxiety, which I'd never experienced. So, I like,
Alcohol is like pouring gasoline on anxiety.
exactly
And it
everything.
starts out that it soothes us. It starts out, but it turns on you.
It turns,
It turns
and
on you.
boy, did it turn. And I didn't actually know how I was gonna like face the world again, which was just
Yeah.
crazy. But I read,
And you were in a band, did you say?
yeah. So
That's really hard to quit because that's just like the culture of that life,
yes, and
the
that's how
lifestyle.
I ended up in Europe. So where so but when I burnt out with the anxiety, I also read with you, this there was a little bit of, call it, pressure there to be like medicated, and I was absolutely determined. I was at my lowest and at my, call it, my weakest, but I knew that no matter what, I didn't want to be medicated. Now, again, disclaimer, I think each to their own. Medication is very vital in cases to take,
Some people
so
need
people
it.
can function. Some people need it. Me
Mhm.
personally, I was just determined to find natural, and the thing that the anxiety was telling me was that I needed to start addressing the stuff that I'd been refusing to address. That's what it was telling me.
Yep.
It was like, you cannot keep doing what you're
It's
doing
an
to yourself.
indicator. It's
Mm.
guidance. Yeah. The anxiety, all these emotions, we're not supposed to shove them down. We're supposed to use them as guidance.
It was an absolute indicator, that if and it's amazing how the body does that. It's like, if you don't sort this out, I'm going to kind of pull it, rein it in, and you're going to have to. But yeah, from there I took a very dramatic left turn and left the corporate world and went to London to tour with a rock band. Went to the UK to tour for 2 years, and with that came a very um, rapid journey of self growth, but also the excessive stuff intensified because it was the rock and roll
Mm-hmm.
thing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that's part of that. But just that, for me, like, when I started doing the self-reflection and yoga and meditation and really looking within and having stepped out of all this noise that I was in back in Australia, um, that's when those priorities and things start, the alignment started to happen, and the thirst started to ease off until I got to a place where I could eliminate it.
Alignment. That's such an important word too, because that's why we get involved with addiction. That's what's going on, is we're out of alignment with our purpose, with everything. And that's what we're trying to kind of feel less and feel like, because we know we're out of alignment. Our soul knows, at least. And like you said, our body tells us, like, what, even my autoimmune, that my body was telling me something's wrong. You're eating is wrong. And that, in my case there, right? But then remember, our brains work differently as addicts too. And that naltrexone was a turning point for me. Have you heard of naltrexone?
I haven't. No.
So it is actually a pill that's it's subscribed, not subscribed, prescribed.
Prescribed.
Yeah, prescribed a lot in the United States for people who have food addiction and alcohol addiction. And my friend had seen a documentary called One Little Pill, and it was about this method called the Sinclair method. And it's a documentary hosted by, I think, Claudia Christian. And she actually was an alcoholic. She calls herself an alcoholic. And she started using the Sinclair method, which means she would take one naltrexone an hour before anytime she drinks. And what it does is it's an opioid blocker, and some people call it an opiate blocker. It blocks the pleasure centers of your brain some, so you don't feel as much pleasure, and then you're not as likely to binge. So that's why it's also for food addiction too, is, because it works on the brain. Well, we weren't going to order it in the United States. Our healthcare system is awful, and it's all for profit. And also, if you tell someone like, oh, well, I want to get this because I'm struggling with alcohol, that's going to be on your record permanently, and your health insurance goes up. And, we pay for a lot of money already just for that. But anyway, we ordered it instead online from like a pharmacy online, and it came from India, and it took forever to get to us. But me and two of my friends, we were all like, okay, we're going to get this under control. Let's see. We wanted to try, because we still wanted to keep alcohol in our lives. I wasn't ready to quit. I would do stuff like, oh, I'm going to drink all organic wine, and, like thinking that's healthy. But yeah, so I tried and then I'm like, I don't really like beer. So I'm like, I'll just start drinking beer. And then that would only lead me to I'd get a buzz and then go buy some wine. It didn't work. So this naltrexone, we did it together one night. We took one. And it was so weird. Like I drank this a big glass of wine, and I could tell that I'm a lightweight. I'm only 5 feet tall, like 100 pounds. So doesn't take much. I could tell that I was buzzing. I could tell but it wasn't pleasurable like it usually is. It was just like whatever. And what I've learned is that it makes your brain more like a typical brain, like a normal brain. I don't like that word, but it's what we're going to use for lack of a better word. And I was like, you don't really give a shit about that second glass. Like, I was like, this is why people who aren't addicts, who don't have the addictive brain with the dopamine hits, like we get the crazy dopamine hits they don't get, they think we're weak. But really, they do not even know how they don't know how we feel. We get such a more intense dopamine hit. And that was so eye-opening for me. It was a turning point, because I was like, alcohol is not so powerful after all. It's not the alcohol, it's my brain. My brain has all the power. And that's another thing that I don't like about like these programs. They teach that you're powerless. And I teach the exact opposite. I teach that, empowerment, and that we can have power. But yeah, for me, I don't even want to learn how to moderate, because I feel so good now. My life's improved so much. It's done a complete 180 without alcohol, and then I know too much about, oh, well, guess what? It's a group 1 carcinogen that they don't tell you about it. That means it causes cancer. It's linked to 7 different big types of cancer, which I'm sure it's more than that, but those are the ones that's scientifically been linked to. Breast cancer, and I think colon cancer are one of the top 2. So it's a group 1 carcinogen, right up there with tobacco and asbestos. And they don't tell you that. They don't put it on the label because it's such a huge moneymaker. Little conspiracy theories here, but it kind of reminds me of the 1930s or the 1950s. Doctors were literally paid by tobacco companies to prescribe cigarettes. They were paid to do that. And it's like, it's crazy to think about that now, but I kind of feel like we're kind of in that same little scammy period with alcohol, because their doctors were recommending, oh, a glass of red wine is good for your heart. Da, da, da. And now they're coming around saying there's really no safe amount of alcohol because it's straight up ethanol, it's rocket fuel, it's it's, you're drinking a poison, and there's no way to button that up and make it look pretty. You're drinking a poison. Like, I know people who will not touch tap water because of the fluoride. They won't touch tap water, but they'll drink alcohol every night. I'm like, do you know how backwards that is? But that's so interesting as an addict, what you tell yourself, all the lies, all the denial. I was in denial most of my life about alcohol. I just thought I was normal. And people like who were telling me I drank too much were just boring and lame. Like, whatever,
Mm.
I'm fun and you're lame. Like, I didn't even see it. I couldn't see it. And we cannot change anything that we don't acknowledge first. So I didn't acknowledge a problem until I was in my 40s. I thought I was fine.
Likewise, I'm just going to call it same deal. Same deal.
Well, that's what we'll call it. We'll call this episode "Me Too."
Me too. That has its own
Right. Well, we'll
kind of
call it "Same Deal." We'll call it
same
"Same Deal."
same deal. But yeah, that perspective you're talking about, you're right. It's like if somebody doesn't have that perspective of a different kind of brain, they can't kind of imagine or understand where you're coming from. But then our perspective of, hey, we're the life of the party, what's wrong with you guys? Perspective is a
Mm-hmm.
massive thing. But that, no, what's the drug called?
Naltrexone,
Naltrex.
Naltrexone.
It
Naltrexone.
sound like we always used to say alcohol takes the edge off, but it actually sounds like that drug actually takes the edge off because it.
So I hated it, to be honest with you. So I only took it that one time because what in the beep, why would I drink alcohol if it's not pleasurable? So I was drinking for the pleasure. I'm chasing a buzz, right?
Mm.
Like, I didn't want it. So some people do it and they want to keep that alcohol in their lives. But for me, I just was like, if it took a lot of the fun out for me. And with my brain, we have more pleasure over everything. Like I said, even whether it's food, whether it's sex, whether it's like we just shopping, that dopamine hit, we just get so much more of a reaction. So I didn't want to numb that. Like, I just would rather get rid of alcohol and realize, like, Brene Brown has a great saying. It's we cannot selectively numb feelings. So when we're drinking alcohol or smoking weed or whatever your addiction is, we're literally numbing all of the feelings, even the good ones, even the joy. So we can't selectively numb. So it's just coming to that conclusion where I actually am so joyful now, and I wasn't able to feel this way. I thought I was having fun. I thought, but this level that I can be at now, this high frequency I'm able to be in, and also just knowing so much about law of attraction. The more I learned about alcohol, you guys, knowledge is huge. Like, get information. Like, I usually tell people, focus on the positive, but if you're trying to quit something, I want you to focus on the negative, focus on all the bad stuff about that substance, because it is a lower vibrational substance. And once I started gaining this knowledge I was already a coach, by the way, because I was helping people with other things, not addiction. I added on addiction recovery as a niche. And that's how I was able to address, like, holy shit. That's when I really was able to see myself, when I'm reading about it and learning about it and being like, it was undeniable at that point. I couldn't I couldn't say I didn't have the struggle. I definitely had that struggle, especially when you try to quit. Do that, guys. Try to quit for a week or a month, and see how you feel. Like, if it's really that bad of a struggle, that's the definition of addiction, something that is affecting you in a negative way, but you can't stop.
I think the alcohol has the ability to like dull the shine, to take the shine
Yes.
off. And, the whole sort of rock and roll thing and tortured artist thing is like, I never made the best art when I was hungover. I was never the best parent when I was hungover. And this whole, you need to be sort of tortured to make great art. Well, it's just when I stopped drinking, I could actually focus. I had clarity. I had energy.
Clarity is beautiful.
And it just, it just kind of took a lot of that stuff
When you quit,
away.
did you have like brain fog for a while?
Yeah, but it was quite a slow progression. But the thing
Mm-hmm.
I've talked about is I need to see things. I'm not sure if you're the same, but I need to see things visually. And until I see them
Mm-hmm.
visually, I can't necessarily take stock of them very well. So with the alcohol, I reduced it a lot, but I felt it still had a grip on me. So I had a calendar, and I would just, when I thought I'd had too much, I'd call it my equivalent of too much on a night, I'd just put like a blue circle around that date. And then
Mm,
I noticed there were still quite a few blue circles. So I was like, just try and reduce the blue circles. Don't
I
try and
like
set,
that.
yeah, don't try and be too extreme. Just try and reduce them. And I was really finding it hard to reduce them. And I didn't like that because I am a very disciplined, determined person. So then they did start to slowly reduce. And then I got to that point where I was like, I'm going to do a month. And then the month turned into 5 years. But my point is the visual exercise helped me because it was all a cloud. It was like I didn't know, I was kind of thinking about it. But when I actually saw it on the calendar, I could put it all in perspective and say, hey, well, that's actually not cool. Like, I don't want so many blue
It takes you out of denial,
circles.
right? Snaps you
Yeah.
right out. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, there
Showed
it
me,
is. I can't deny it. I'm looking at it.
put it
Yeah,
on
that's
the
a great,
table.
great idea. Like, I used an app, but I used an app for like, I like it really was motivating for me to see how much money I was saving,
Mm.
like, and that's something, there's apps for that. I can't remember what I use. I don't do anything anymore. It's just like not, and it's just not my identity anymore. I don't even think about it. So I kind of feel like if we're always counting days, that's another thing that I don't like about the AA thing. You're counting, you're still in it. You're still in it because it's like, so like, I don't make it important to me anymore. Um, but yeah, I save so much money at restaurants. Did you notice? like,
I noticed that. Well, mine was, I had a night when I first got to Europe and I was kind of in my peak of drinking. I had a night where I blew like $1,000, just like
mm,
it was like you said
easy.
earlier, it was a party that turned into something else, that turned into a hotel, that turned into a thing, and then next thing you know, it was like a whole credit card night.
Yeah, you sound
Um,
like me. I get very generous with my money and things too.
yeah,
Like,
and it was all for,
I'm going to
hey,
buy everybody drinks.
it
Woo!
was all,
Yep.
hey, let's have a great time, but it was just completely reckless.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, again, having a son, I'd sort of be in a bar and I was like, well, I can blow $20 on booze, or I could buy him books or a book or something. Um, Not denying that, when events are there to be celebrated, awesome, especially if you work for something and then you're all celebrating together, great. But when I first came back to Germany, I'd find myself just kind of in a bar on a Tuesday night, and I'd be like, well, I can use this money for my son, because didn't have a lot being trying to pursue an artistic career in a foreign
Yeah.
country 12 years ago. Um, my again priority shift, and yeah, the money's a factor, the energy, the focus, all of it. So it's just can't advocate it for enough. But when back to that party question, when people say, "Oh, why aren't you drinking?" or whatever, I try not to preach. I'm like, it's just the way
It's
I
hard
was.
for me not to.
Yeah, but I'm like the way, each to their own. And I'm just like the way I
yeah.
was wired, the way I'm kind of wired, and the culmination of things that happen in life, it's not a good mix.
It
Mix.
just depends how they ask me, like usually I'm just, if someone keeps pushing me and pushing and
Mm,
pressing, no, but why? But why? Because like I didn't have a rock bottom. It was just like, and it was, this is what made it harder to quit. And I want people to know you don't have to have a rock bottom to completely say, to change your life for the better. You don't wait for that. I was running two businesses and successfully when I quit. Like I was very functional. And my son would even tell you, like, I was kind of fun. He almost liked it when I drank because of the fact I got more generous. He knew how to, kids are little manipulators. They are like he took
yeah.
advantage. He took
Yeah.
advantage.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, let's go to get a steakhouse and okay, let's go. But yeah, he would take advantage of things when I would drink. I was more of a fun drunk, like not an angry drunk. And so it makes it harder because you're not having all these. I had consequences over the years, right? But it's over a 30-year thing. We all do stupid shit when we drink. But I didn't have like a rock bottom, like one situation. Even that 2008 DUI that I told you about, when I started talking to people, everybody had one. Like everyone I knew, they're like, "Oh yeah, oh you blew, you shouldn't have blown." Like then the whatever that is, that they calibrate how much you were drinking that night, and like that's how I got arrested, is because I had done a shot of alcohol right before I left for the night. So I remember driving and feeling more and more drunk. Like I said earlier, it was Valentine's Day. I'm in this little red dress, went to a club downtown Cincinnati where I live, and wearing this little red dress. I'm all dressed up. And then I'm next thing you know, I'm on the side of the freeway taking all these tests and walking in my heels and crying and mascara running down my face. It was awful, but it still wasn't enough a catalyst for me to quit drinking because that wore off. Like, I didn't have enough consequences. My son was what, in 2008, he was 5. And at first I was super scared. Oh my God, I'm going to lose custody. Even my ex-husband was like, she thought it was kind of funny that I got a DUI, like, because it was so normal. Like everybody had one. Like, and I'm sitting there trying to warn people about it. I'd never talked to anyone about it, so I was just kind of ignorant. And that's why, even though like I had that shot, like when you blow into this thing, it will, if you had one beer, you're in trouble. That's all it takes. So I talked myself out of that. I rationalized it. But a turning point when I really knew this is nothing like a rock bottom, but I overdid drinking one night when I promised myself. I made a promise. Like, we can't trust ourselves when we're drinking. We're little liars. We lie to other people. We lie to ourselves. I hid things. I did, like, I would have a pregame, like I'd have a drink before I left the house. So anyway, I did stuff like that all the time. But this one night I promised myself I was only going to have 2 drinks, 2 glasses of wine. That was my limit. Of course, I didn't keep to that. I went way over, and then was up in the middle of the night with anxiety. I had anxiety, because like alcohol is a depressant, and our bodies naturally create stimulants to counteract that. So that depressant wears off about 4 hours after your last drink, maybe 5 hours at the most. Then all you're left with is those stimulants. That's why people are waking up in the middle of the night with racing hearts, racing thoughts, because you still got those stimulants, but the depressant's out of your system. And that's why, unfortunately, having another drink is what will calm you down. Well, this night I didn't have anything at home, and I'm up at 3 a.m. freaking out. I'm like trying not to have like a panic attack. Like, I was really in a bad way. And I waited till the grocery store opened. I mean, it was probably like 7 a.m. I go and I got a bottle of wine, 7 a.m., because I had a client at 8 a.m. And I couldn't do that. Like, I was too panic mode. Also bought a gift bag, because I was so embarrassed. So this was a wake up call for me. I was so embarrassed to be buying a bottle of wine at 7 a.m. that I bought a gift bag to make it look like I'm going to a party later. This isn't for me. I'm not going to drink this as soon as I get home, but I did drink it as soon as I got home. Not the whole bottle, but I drank some before, and then it calmed you down right away. And then that's how you get in that vicious cycle, is because this is why that I'm having anxiety, is because of the depressant worn off. So let me get some more depressant. That's the hair of the dog that bits you, is a common phrase that people say.
It becomes a calibration. You start to calibrate.
And then it's a horrible cycle to be into. And like, just like realizing from this book called Alcohol Explained by William Porter. Anyone listening, get that book if you're thinking about quitting, because it explains everything. This guy was from the UK, and in the UK, it's just, they start drinking pretty young. Like, it's just so acceptable there. And he was just kind of doing some research, trying to figure out why he couldn't sleep at night. He thought he had insomnia. But the more research he did, he connected it to alcohol. So like, and then he comes up with all these other things, like, that surrounding alcohol. And don't read that book if you don't want to quit, because there's things that you will learn that will expand your mind. And once your mind is expanded, there is no going back, and you will never have peace with drinking alcohol again, because like you might still drink, but you're not going to be peaceful about it, because then you'll know too much. Like this, like I knew that alcohol was bad for us. Like, I wasn't stupid, but I thought, okay, it's not great for our liver, so I'm going to take milk thistle and B vitamins. And I was like, I'm going to take these supplements to counteract the damage. But then that's like I said, just knowledge, learning about it causing cancer and all these other things. And there's so many ways to die from alcohol. It destroys your gut, and our gut has most of our health.
I remember when I was in that kind of denial world, a doctor was just asking, I think I went to get my liver checked, and the doctor was like, "Oh, tell me about a sort of a night for you in terms of your alcohol consumption." And I was sort of like, well, it starts with a beer, and then I have another 5 beers, and then it shifts to shots at some point, and then we go to a club, and and she's like, okay, stop. She's like, okay, you don't need to like give me the whole rundown of the
I
night.
lied to my doctor. Good for you. Good for you. You just put it out there. I
Well,
was
I put
like,
it out there, and by drink number 25, she was sort of like, okay, I've heard enough. We're going to test
wow.
your liver.
Right. How did it
But
test? Did you have the elevated
it was
enzymes?
actually no. This was when this was because I was very active and feared as well. So it was like kind of in my prime. So it was okay. But yeah, I'm lucky in that sense that I didn't do serious damage. I think the binging thing, I've heard them say that's worse because in a way because you're sort of punishing yourself in a couple of short days, and
Yeah.
it's not a moderate. If you're having a wine every night, that's sort of more across the board.
I
But when
have
you,
heard that as
yeah,
well. Yeah, 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 yeah. And I
so
think we really just need to be honest with ourselves too. Like, and a lot of this healing is self-awareness is so spiritual. It's like that's like the main thing. It's like self-awareness is the key, really.
mm,
Are you someone who can moderate? Or you're usually either a moderator or an abstainer. Turns out I'm an abstainer, and I'm really like I called it earlier, my superpower. Reframe everything. Look at it
mm.
because of the fact that I'm such an extremist, it really serves me in other areas of my life. Like I'm a badass in other areas.
But I really like what you were saying about don't reinforce stories that we tell ourselves. Don't
Right.
reinforce those. If something needs to change, why reinforce it or label yourself in a certain way?
Mm-hmm.
Try work at kind of changing that. And the law of attraction could sometimes feel a bit sort of, what do you call it, woo woo.
Ooh,
But
this is my area. Let's talk about it.
but
Because it's science. It's science.
yes, science and talking about that frequency, that energy frequency that you have um, kind of worked at for yourself. When that frequency is in an aligned and healthy place, I do believe that that's when opportunities and sort of the right people will come into
You get
play.
into receiving mode.
You get
Yeah.
into
And
receiving mode. Yeah.
yep.
Is
And
that a fair interpretation of, yeah.
absolutely. And just for your people who might be listening who are like think it's woo woo or they're like what's law of attraction, because I still run into people who've never heard of it. It's crazy. But it's not even new. It's not new. It's esoteric wisdom. It's ancient wisdom. And it was kind of we've forgotten about or whatever, or some people say hidden, but basically it's everything's energy. It's the same. It's not a religion. It's the same as like the law of gravity, right? We don't get to say, I'm not going to apply the law of gravity, or I'm not going to believe in the law of gravity. Whether you believe in it or not, it's still there. Whether you don't have to believe in it. So it will serve you to learn about it. Everything vibrates. If you look at it under a microscope, even everything solid, this is vibrates, and it just vibrates at different rates, different frequencies. And that's really what it's based on. It's quantum physics, and everything is connected in that way. Kind of like I saw in my spiritually transformative experience. Like I visually saw how everything was connected. And our hearts are magnetic, and our minds are electric. We're electromagnetic beings. Again, this is science. We have stuff that we can measure stuff now. We can measure frequencies. And actually, have you heard what the top frequency they say is?
No.
Um, I would have guessed love, but they've actually able to measure frequency. It's authenticity. Authenticity
Mm,
is the highest, which I'm like, okay, well, that makes sense because that would include love, because we are
mm.
essentially from love. And when we just disconnect ourselves sometimes. But the basic thing with law of attraction is ask plus believe equals receive. But it's so much more complicated because that believe part is what we all get hung up on, because we all have these limiting beliefs, right? And the good news is we can change that, but we all have our own point of attraction, which gets really complicated because that's everything, our patterns, our programmings from birth up until now. That's included in our point of attraction. You can see how that's so individualized for everybody. It's so different because people are like, well, I can't get the law of attraction to work for me. That's because you've got to work on this programming and all your patterns. And then you have part two is momentum. You have a momentum on a certain subject, and it's different for different subjects. Like for a while, I had a horrible momentum with relationships because I had that toxic relationship pattern, and now that's healed. So you're able to change your momentum. Like at that same time, I had a great momentum with business and money, right? So you can have different momentums on different subjects. The last part of the point of attraction is going to be, how do you feel today? How do you feel right now? What's your current vibration? So you've got all of that, like your programs, patterns, momentum, and how do you feel right now? And everybody is so different with that. That's why with coaching, that's kind of what I'm doing is we're looking into the patterns of programming, changing all those limiting beliefs so that you can attract better, because we are attracting for better or for worse. It doesn't only work for positive stuff. And you can't just sit home on a meditation cushion, think positive thoughts and have things flow to you. You have to take action. There is no law of attraction without action. A lot of people think they can just think positive thoughts, but it's really, we're more of a feeling universe. So we're going to attract more what we feel. And I say this phrase I just made up, like, you can't bullshit the universe. You can't just say positive affirmations and not feel it's true. That's why we have to have that mind heart coherence is what they call it. It has to be in alignment, our mind and our heart. So we can't just say things and not feel it. And that just takes practice. It's not harder to think positive and believe it. It's not harder. It's just that we practice so much the other way. We've practiced all this negative programming, negative patterns. So it's kind of like we need to brainwash ourselves the other direction for a while, like almost in a crazy way to until we get to that point where we actually do believe it. It's going to feel fake at first. It's going to feel fake when we have those really harsh limiting beliefs, all that negative self-talk, those negative loops we get into about ourselves. We should be talking to ourselves like we talk to our best friends. We shouldn't put ourselves down constantly.
You're spot on with the action, though. There still needs to be an aspect of taking action on things, and that can involve risk or fears or risk of failure or a whole heap of stuff.
Do things scared. You got to do things when you're scared. Like everything good that I have in my life, I did it. I was scared at first. There's nothing that I wasn't like. Even doing my first video for coaching, like I put it off for so long. Like I only started doing videos in 2021. I think I put it off for 5 years because I was afraid of judgment. I didn't want to. So I was online, but I would post like just memes and not really put myself out there because I know what I'm talking about is going to bring some hate and some people. I get a lot of hate. People tell me things that are crazy because of law of attraction. They like, I'll pray for your soul. You need Jesus and things like that. I'm like, well, I'm down with Jesus. Jesus is cool. Jesus was teaching this stuff. In my opinion, Jesus was teaching us and he also said, we all have this connection. He said, everything I can do, you can do and more. He was teaching all of this stuff and how to master ourselves, how to be powerful creators. And we just threw it all away. We didn't listen. But yeah, a lot of these things that I had going on, anxiety, depression, OCD, ADHD, I'm like you. I did it the natural way. Like no one was there when I was a kid to teach me how to manage my thoughts, how to manage my emotions, not suppress them, but manage them. And so like you could totally give yourself OCD by sitting there thinking these negative thought loops, and you get them out of control. One thought, it's energetic too. One of these negative thoughts attaches to another thought, and you give yourself these things. You really do. And if I could get myself out of it with my monkey brain, literally anybody can. I'm just saying.
For sure. Do you have an actionable challenge you'd like to offer for the listeners?
Yes. So for something that really will be helpful is get rid of distractions for a while, because like I said, the key is self-awareness, and we have to stop just distracting ourselves with things. Like I used to say with video games, it was like for the kids, but I see so many adults addicted to video games, even things like that, even things like Netflix. It's okay to have some of these things, but monitor yourself. How long are you doing it? Because really, self-awareness, getting to know yourself, we're not going to do that when we're constantly distracted. We're not going to make any good changes in our lives when we're not willing to be present in the moment. And I know like you probably heard of Eckhart Tolle, I don't even know how to say his name, but the power of now. All of our powers in the present moment. And most of us are either, thinking about our past or worrying about our future. We're never in the present. So that would be my actionable challenge, is to get rid of distractions for a while. Give yourself time each day to do some sort of meditation. It could be a walking meditation, and breathe. Focus on your breath. Don't try to get your mind completely quiet, because look, I'm not a master of that. Like I still can't do that. So I focus. Meditation could be focusing on one thing. So I focus on my breath, or do a walking meditation where I'm focusing on nature. It doesn't mean you have to have a completely quiet mind, because you're going to have thoughts come in and out. Don't beat yourself up. That's how it is. That's like normal. And for a long time, I wouldn't try meditation because I felt like I was doing it wrong. But it's actually, that's what you're doing. Sometimes you might meditate for, 15 minutes and only have 1 good minute of quiet, and that's okay. So do that, like get rid of distractions, try to limit yourself on your phone. Like we're all addicted to our phones these days. Like scrolling addiction is a huge one. Catch yourself, be more mindful. Get rid of distractions for a while. And then you're going to really be able to see in your life clearly. You're going to get some clarity of what changes you need to make. Like and it's going to be an eye opener, especially the scrolling one. I think that's the biggest one. Like I have to have my phone with me because clients will text me in between sessions for accountability. It's what I offer. And I can't just leave my phone. So I've noticed myself, like I literally will put my phone away. You got to catch yourself. You got to be mindful. And remember, this is maintenance. This is every day. Like, just like when you go to the gym, you get the perfect body. You're like, finally, I hit my goal. You don't just stop working. You don't just start eating like shit. There's maintenance involved every day you continue to work out. You continue to eat healthy to maintain that body. It's the same way with the spiritual stuff. It's the same way with recovery. We want to set ourselves up every day for success. So put yourself to bed on time. There's another one. Put yourself to bed. Get a good night's sleep. Sleep is so important. Have a morning routine. Okay. Like start with these things, and move your body a little bit first thing in the morning, and just really try to get into your body and out of your head, and lose some of these distractions that you have. And then you're going to really know which steps to take next. We all have inner guidance. We all have like a higher self that we can connect to, but not if we have so many distractions. We can't.
It's interesting you dropped the Para Now, because that's the book that presented to me at the time I needed it. It's funny how books present themselves when we need them.
They just show up, right?
They show up. And, I've tried to pass that book on to other people, and it doesn't necessarily groove with them or whatever at that time. But for me, that was the book that started to give me that observer skill. I started to observe my own flawed thinking and beliefs. That book really made me step outside of my ego or whatever you call it, and start observing what was going on. And then I realized that there was a whole lot of misalignment between behaviors and who I was. And so, yeah, that book was pivotal in terms of my journey.
I love it. And a lot of people think we are our emotions and our thoughts, but we aren't. We're the observer, right? Like you said. And that was a huge turning point for me to learn that. So yeah, cool. That was a really powerful book for me as well.
Where can people find you?
So the best way I'm on everything. I'm on TikTok. I'm on, I have 2 Facebook pages, my business, my personal. I'm on Instagram, Day One Life Coaching. I'm the verified one with the blue check mark on Facebook and also on Instagram. But if anyone listening is thinking maybe coaching might be helpful for me, but you're not sure, I do offer a free discovery call. So it's just one-on-one with me. We chat for about 20 to 30 minutes. You tell me a little bit about your story and what your goals are. And it might not be addiction. It might be like, I get a lot of people who are just like, they're kind of lost in life, or they feel stuck and they don't. And so there's that. I help people with fitness. I help people with like any type of big transitions. But and a lot of times every addiction is usually, there's some sort of addiction, because limiting beliefs are addictions. Overthinking is addiction. Negative thinking is an addiction. And I'm like, when I really started my practice, I had no idea, but everything I do, there's some sort of addiction at the root cause of people's issues. And it's really interesting. So yeah. So if anything I said resonated with you, and I offer that call, it's free. You have nothing to lose. And if you're not a match for me, I will tell you, because not everybody's a match for this. And I will guide you somewhere else. I will be able to guide you to either a program or a person. I have a lot of connections, and
that's
so
great.
yeah,
that's great that you do that, because it's better to just call it how it is in an honest way than some people would kind of string people along perhaps, but for you to just be upfront about that's very cool.
I might not be the best first step for somebody, because honestly, like, if someone's in really active addiction, I'm not going to waste your money. You still have a little bit of work to do before you come to someone like me, because you have to at least have that commitment and 100% commitment that you're going to quit, at least minimum. That's the bare minimum, because we can't rely on motivation. And I did used to accept people. And that's how I learned that I can't just accept just anybody, because a lot of people think we can rely on motivation, but motivation comes and goes. And I can't be there for someone 24/7. So like, we have to rely on commitment and discipline, not motivation all the time. It comes and goes. For me, for an Olympic athlete, they're not always motivated, but they rely on discipline and commitment to get the work done, right? And my website's day1lifecoaching.com, DAYONE lifecoaching.com. But you have my link tree. That'll guide people to everything that I do.
Awesome. Well, it's been a real pleasure. Like I say, so many we're all on an individual journeys, right? But so many similarities in terms of what like trauma does and how we're kind of, there seems to be this portion of society, whether it's personality typing or whatever it may be, that are sensitive types and feel a lot. So
yeah, no wonder we want to numb out. We just want to feel better. Like, I hate the stigma of addiction and how it's criminalized. Like, people just need help.
Awesome. Well, we'll have to do it again sometime.
Definitely.
But yeah, I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
There you go, guys. Honest ratings for the show on Apple are appreciated. If you have a guest suggestion, please feel free to reach out on my website at danielthomas.co. I'm also on social media at Mr. Dan Thomas. Catch you on the next episode.